So I'm making a video response, haven't made these in a while, to my boy Zach. Now, if you don't know who my boy Zach is, he runs a YouTube channel. Used to be called Diversity and Comics, but now it's just Comics Matter with your boy Zach. So if you guys knew about him but kind of lost touch, he changed his channel name. He makes really interesting videos. In this video in particular, he talked about something really interesting, and it's just something that you kind of know exists, but until someone puts it into words, you can't really articulate it. He talks about the comic industry, how it's all about nepotism, and if one of them lies, then you have to lie as well. It is like pretty much what the industry is at this point. And he asks a very interesting question, a question that I also thought about. Why is it that social justice activists can't crowdfund? And this is mostly true, especially when it comes to video games, especially when it comes to comic books and entertainment. They will sometimes get a crowdfunding done, but it's usually like the type of demographic you're appealing to and the type of quality. Now, in the case of comic books, it's very interesting because a lot of people started complaining about what Marvel and DC were doing, right? And the initial response from the forums and even from the industry was like, oh, if you don't like it, why don't you do it better? And a couple of people actually did it better. Ethan Van Sciver, Mike from DC, well, used to work at DC. He used to color the Injustice comics. And you also have your boy Zach, and together I think they raised over $1 million in crowdfunding. So after they managed to do that, after like, if you don't like it, go build your own, and they built their own, they have received countless of hurdles from the industry in order to try to suppress them. Comic book stores would refuse to sell their merchandise, and they were like, you know what, fine, then we're not going to use comic book stores, which by the way are now going bankrupt. They got threats online, and Ethan Van Sciver even had like acts of hooliganism done against him. He went to Gotham Pizza in order to sign some books, and the next day the pizza was vandalized. They had broken windows and stuff because probably very tolerant people went there in order to send a message. So, you know, like, plus all of the slanders and all of the smears in the authoritative comic book sources. So yeah, if you don't like it, build your own. And then when you go build your own, it's like, why are you building your own? Take it down, take it. Right, but the point is, like, there is a market for comic books, right? Like, over $1 million was raised for one issue. That is a lot of money. So the problem is that the people don't know how to take advantage of the market. And I looked at this comic that my boy Zach was talking about, which managed to raise $31,000, well, $32,000, and there's just 5 days to go, and the goal is $50,000. And this is quite low compared to what other comic book fundraisers are doing. Like, there is a comic book that's outside of the Comicsgate thing, but it was called Patriotica. And Patriotica also made Kickstarters, and it raised a lot more money than this. And why is this important? Well, apparently the person who is creating this is an important person. Like, she's the editor-curator of Black Crown in the imprint, former award-winning DC Vertigo executive editor, right? So she's some hot shit. And we have a word in Romania for these types of people. It's like, you're the strongest guy in the parking lot, but the parking lot is empty. I don't know where it came from, but it's a saying. And this is like the case, you know, because when you hear someone, oh, prize award winner, you know, executive director, blah, blah, blah. If you think that the world functions in a meritocratic way, then yeah, they should be hot shit. Like, they should actually be able to sell products. But when you actually realize that the world doesn't function that way, it makes sense that, you know, all these titles and all these awards mean nothing. Like, if you look at the awards, nowadays awards aren't really given based on merit. They're just given based on political correctness. Like, the correct person needs to win the correct award. And this was completely revealed by the Sad Puppies campaign with the Hugo Awards. And what usually happens, right, when you co-opt, let's say, the board that gives the Hugo Awards, and you make sure that your people are there, and they're now giving prizes based on ideology rather than merit. Well, what happens is that people are going to buy books that, you know, Hugo champions, and it's like, oh, this book won the Hugo Award. Clearly, it must be good. And when they read the book and they find it's average, and then they read something like Game of Thrones that never won a Hugo Award, and the quality is just staggering, people are just going to eventually stop caring about these awards. So you can have like 5, 6, 7 awards that no one gives a shit anymore, because people know that these awards don't signify anything. They don't mean anything. They're bland. And it's the same with like being executive director. Like when you take someone like Zoe Quinn and you put her in charge of a comic book that doesn't sell, and then 1 year later the comic book goes bankrupt, and then she's hired to do 2 other comic books in other places, like the Addams Family and some other comic book at Marvel. You know, it shows that just because you manage to reach to the top in these corporations, it doesn't mean you're talented. You know, like back in the day, you had to work at an independent company, be recognized, and then climb the ranks, and maybe in like 10 or 20 years, you would get to the position that Zoe Quinn was in. But nowadays, like, these positions are thrown to people that not only don't like comic books, I never spoke about comic books, but they go on the Twitter and they give sass to comic book readers. So yeah, like that's one of the reasons why people aren't interested in them. Like the name doesn't matter anymore. Like, you know, like people just want to see a good story. They don't care about who is the person behind the comic now. The second thing is that these comics really bring nothing new to the table. Like, I'm looking at it, and the art style is very bland. Like, you're competing with manga, okay? You're competing with people like Ethan Van Sciver. You're competing with other people that put better drawings. Like, there's 2 things that attract people to a comic book: the art style and the story. So I'm looking at this art style. It looks like fan fiction. You know, it looks like something that I find on Tumblr, and I can get that for free. Why do I have to pay money in order to support, you know, like this thing? Like, maybe it is for other people, you know, but for me, like, no, this, you know, it's not pleasant to the retina. I'm sorry to say, you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, my eye is beholding this and is not appreciating. Secondly, the story, like what exactly does it bring to the table? You know, like you look at manga and they're trying to do all the crazy shit in order to attract people. Like, for example, there's a story about a girl that died and she's reincarnated as a slime, and she tries to level up through the dungeon in order to fight off the heroes. You know, like there's a manga about a guy that has his parents dying, and he now finds a cat, and he's bonding with the pet cat, and half of the story is about him and his daily life and trying to understand, you know, the cat, because he's like a very introverted type of person, and the other half of the story is through the point of view of the cat. You know, like everything is so different in manga. Like everything is original, everything is fresh. You know, you get a story of anything you want, you can find it there. You know, do you want a story with pirates? Manga has it. Do you want a story with superheroes? Manga has it. Do you want a story with 2 guys porking each other? Manga has it. Like, you know, so you're competing with these people. I know that Ethan Van Sciver says, oh, no. Manga is different, V. Manga is different because it's a different art form. No, it's not. All right, like if you look at it, what manga really is, it's pictures with a story. That's what comic books are, right? The only difference, I guess, is that Japanese people can't color. That's the only thing. But right, so, you know, like this really brings nothing to the table. Like, I'm not really into buying this. What is this? What is this, like, plump lady that does her lipstick be a badass goth? Okay. Now here's the thing, right? Let's say that this story might not be for me, and it's for people that are, you know, into the far left. Like, to be honest, if you had a comic book that was way too American for my taste, you know, like just waving the American flag and, you know, America first, fuck yeah, and, you know, talking it from an evangelical point of view, like, I would understand why other Americans would like it. But I'm from Romania, you know, I wouldn't be able to necessarily empathize 100% with that particular culture, so I wouldn't necessarily buy that comic book, right? So I would, just because it's something that I particularly don't want to spend money on, Doesn't mean I don't understand why other people wouldn't. So let's assume that this comic book would be for the far left. Well, the problem with the far left is that they like to virtue signal. And what is virtue signaling? Is putting minimum effort in order to appear that you're a virtuous person without actually helping anyone. So these people are going to go on Twitter and they are going to say, yeah, sure, they want a black woman to be in Star Wars. They want a black James Bond. They want, you know, and they will say that they want these things. But when you give them these things, they don't spend money on it. Because that's too difficult. It's like you have to get your ass off of a chair and go there. And, you know, like, that is too much to ask for them. You want to ask them to criticize some shit and get some virtue point, they will do that. But if you actually ask them to do something, they want. Like, they really want. Like, and you look at the sales, you know, maybe they will go and watch Captain Marvel to stick it to the races. But they're not going to then purchase Captain Marvel merchandise. You know, they're not going to do the extra mile and purchase her comic books. And because they're not really interested in this type of entertainment, which is just bland entertainment. Like, I'm starting to think that maybe they don't like it either. So, you know, this is why they can't get crowdfunding. Because, number one, it's bland. It's been done before. Like, no matter what you're coming up with, it's been done, right? You can't be edgy like the 90s were successful for being edgy. You just can't do that anymore. You can't be South Park, basically. You can't be Jackass. You can't be Beavis and Butthead. You can't be these things that used to get a lot of audience. And finally, like, these people that should be somebody, in reality, they're nobodies. Because even though you might get to the ranks, and even though you might get, like, you know, all these media prestige, and everyone is like, oh, you're such an excellent person. If you can't sell your shit, no one cares. That's the main issue. Sell your shit. And these people, they also give sass to the consumer, right? Like, when you build a relationship with your audience is going to promote your stuff. But if all you're doing is you're blocking people that disagree and you talk about politics all the time and you're trying to be as divisive as possible, not only will people not, you know, share your stuff, but some people will actually boycott it. Like, I keep saying this, like, if Marvel, right, if they put the garbage that they put out with, but they would have a lady that's really adorable and she's got big tits, maybe a Twitch streamer or, you know, like someone that works for them in PR, and all she would do is like, she would be like, hi guys, oh, I got this really cool comic, oh, let's look together, you know, if you want to find out more, purchase the comic, wink, wink, wink. You know, if they get that fiend, the one that sells the bathwater, to advertise for them, like, they would sell these comic books like pancakes, you know? But again, they can't do that because now sex is oppressive. It's not liberating as it used to be. So, you know, they can't really get like one of these Twitch streamers or one of these ladies that already have an audience to promote their shit. Because I tell you, you go to Daphne and you give her like a contract and you're like, you know, we're Marvel, we want you to promote our new Spider-Man or something. Well, not Spider-Man, because I guess he's out of the MCU, isn't he? But, you know, like, you go and give them something. Oh, yeah, these Twitch ladies will promote it to their audience that buy everything just because it comes from them. Like, they buy her bathwater. If she sells anything, people will buy. If she sells Anthem, people will buy it. All she has to do is like, oh, I rest my tits on Anthem. Do you want to buy Anthem? But again, they can't do it because, you know, boof babes are bad and capitalism evil, and yeah, I mean. So that's my answer. That is why it doesn't sell, and that is why it won't sell. But, you know, let me know what you guys think, and feel free to check Zach's channel because he talks about things that I don't have time to talk about. Comic books, which, even if you're not into them, it's really interesting to notice how, like, you must be into video games, you must be into movies, you must be into TV shows, and it's really interesting to notice how this culture that is completely cannibalized by the identitarian left is very similar to what's happening with movies, TV show, and video games. Like, right now, video games are taking a nosedive in the Western world. The Japanese video games are doing awesome, you know, but the Western world, people getting fired, stocks are going down. Same with the mainstream media. Vice, Vox, all these progressive publications, BuzzFeed, they're firing people, they're going in a nose down. movies, TV shows. Like, I could go on and just give you examples of just failure after failure after failure. And it's not because of necessarily the subject that the movies talks about, but it's also about the fact that they're hiring people that have the correct ideology and the correct opinions, but turns out they're not really good at what they're doing. So yeah, I'll end this here, and I'll see you guys in the comments.